Lost technology, ancient discoveries that challenge modern science can't. The Ulfberht Viking Swords, iron-clad anomaly. Leaving the silent, massive stones of Peru, we pivot to a starkly different setting, the cold, harsh world of the Viking Age, where a discovery in iron completely rewrites the timeline of advanced metallurgy. Between the 9th and 11th century CE, in the dark heart of the European Middle Ages, a warrior's most prized possession was his sword. Most swords of the time were made from soft, low-carbon iron that was prone to bending and dulling. The quality of steel was rudimentary, yet scattered across Norse burial sites, from Scandinavia to the Baltic, are approximately 170 swords bearing an enigmatic inscription, Ulfberht or plus Ulfberht plus. The Ulfberht swords are technological anomalies. Using modern analytical techniques, metallurgists have discovered that these swords are not ordinary iron. They are made of crucible steel, also known as high-carbon steel. Crucible steel has a carbon content of around 0.5 to 1.0%, making it exceptionally hard, strong, and flexible. It's a pure homogeneous metal, largely free of the slag impurities that plagued medieval European ironworking. This is the quality of steel found in late medieval European workshops, or more famously, in Damascus steel, a metal not thought to be widely produced in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. Hundreds of years later, the process to create steel of this quality is incredibly demanding. It requires heating the iron to temperatures of at least 150 C over 3000 F in a sealed container, a crucible, to allow the carbon to properly diffuse and create a uniform alloy. Medieval European blacksmiths, using simple bellows and charcoal-fueled forges, could barely achieve temperatures over 1000 C, enough for basic wrought iron, but not for crucible steel. Where did this technology come from? The most accepted hypothesis traces the source of the steel back to the Middle East, specifically to Persia or Central Asia, where the sophisticated wootz steel process was mastered much earlier. The theory suggests the Vikings, through their vast trade network along the Volga River to the Caspian Sea, were importing these highly refined steel ingots, which were then forged and inscribed in Europe. However, the question remains, if the steel was imported, who possessed the precise skill and the specialized tools to forge and temper this exceptionally difficult material into a perfectly balanced, resilient sword blade? The Ulfberht blades exhibit an almost flawless structure, demonstrating a mastery of heat treatment and quenching that was simply not part of the common European metallurgical repertoire of the 9th century. They were, quite literally, swords from the future. The Ulfberht signature is not just a brand, it is a declaration of a lost or highly guarded industrial process. The swords represent an isolated spike in metallurgical excellence that vanished from Europe for centuries, only to be rediscovered with the advent of modern industrial furnaces. It is a stunning example of a technology regression, complex art that was inexplicably available, used to create superior weapons, and then lost, leaving historians to grapple with the reality of an advanced steel-making technique existing centuries before its time. The Osirian, subterranean megalithism and lost purpose. Our journey now takes us to the heart of ancient Egypt, the land of pharaohs and pyramids, to a site that predates even the earliest dynastic structures, the Osirian at Abydos. The Osirian lies directly behind the Temple of Seti I, but its architecture and construction methods are startlingly different from the New Kingdom structures surrounding it. The temple itself is built with relatively smaller blocks of sandstone, characteristic of its time. The Osirian, however, is a vast subterranean, open-air structure built from enormous blocks of red granite and quartzite, some weighing over 100 tons, resembling the megalithic work found at the Giza Plateau, rather than the intricate work of Seti I's era. The structure consists of a massive central hall, originally conceived as an island platform surrounded by water, accessed by a sloping passage. The most baffling feature is the cyclopean masonry, the large stone piers and lintels, which are carved with extreme precision. The granite blocks are dressed, fitted and aligned with a geometrical exactitude that seems out of place for any period other than perhaps the Old Kingdom. And even then, its style is unique. Why is the Osirian considered lost technology? One, the depth and water table. The entire structure is built far below the current ground level, and crucially, below the local water table. To construct the Osirian, the builders would have had to excavate an enormous pit and then contend with massive hydrostatic pressure and constant flooding. This implies the use of sophisticated dewatering technology, possibly involving advanced pumps or an unknown method of controlling subterranean water flow, a feat that modern engineers undertaking similar projects find immensely challenging. The presence of water was clearly central to its design, possibly suggesting it functioned as a water temple or a symbolic representation of the primeval mound emerging from the waters of creation. None. 2. Tool marks and machining. The granite used is an incredibly hard, crystalline rock, difficult to cut even with hardened modern steel. Yet the Osirian exhibits signs of highly accurate, straight-line cutting and smooth surfacing. Researchers have often noted potential evidence of large, powerful rotary or gang saws capable of making deep, straight cuts into granite, tools that Egyptologists claim did not exist until the Roman or even medieval periods. If these ancient builders used only copper or primitive bronze tools, the sheer amount of time and abrasive force required to dress and fit these colossal granite blocks would push the construction date back thousands of years before Setia. 3. The lack of inscriptions. Unlike nearly every other major Egyptian structure, which is covered in hieroglyphs and declarations of the builder, the core megalithic part of the Osirian is almost entirely devoid of inscriptions. This profound lack of self-attribution suggests the builders either belonged to a much older, pre-literate or different cultural group, or that the structure was so sacred and ancient it was considered beyond the purview of the dynastic pharaohs. Egyptologists generally attribute the Osirian to Seti I, arguing he simply used a very archaic style and deep excavation to link his temple to the earliest traditions of Osiris worship. However, the architectural and engineering dissonance is too great for many independent researchers to ignore. They propose the Osirian is a remnant of a much older, pre-dynastic civilization, perhaps dating back to the time of the Great Sphinx, possibly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, which possessed a lost, sophisticated understanding of large-scale stone machining and hydrological engineering. The later pharaohs merely rediscovered and appropriated it. The Osirian stands, half submerged in the silent water of its own mystery, a monumental question, marked challenging the accepted chronology of Egyptian civilization. The Klerksdorp Spheres, an impossible geological puzzle. Our final destination on this journey into lost technology takes us beneath the surface of the Earth itself, to the remote region of South Africa, near the town of Klerksdorp. Here, miners excavating deposits of pyrophyllite, a soft, light-colored mineral, have made a discovery so deeply unsettling that it has been relegated to the realm of out-of-place artifacts, OOPArts. These are the Klerksdorp Spheres, small, metallic-looking or fibrous objects ranging from about 1 to 10 centimeters in diameter. They are not entirely uniform in appearance, but most share two critical perplexing features. 1. Perfect geometry. Many of the spheres are found to be almost perfectly spherical. Some specimens also have 3 parallel grooves etched around their equator, giving them the appearance of being purposefully manufactured or machined artifacts, rather than natural geological formations. 2. Impossible age. The pyrophyllite matrix in which these spheres are embedded belongs to the Autostyle Formation, a layer of rock dated by geologists to the Precambrian era. approximately 2.8 to 3.0 billion years ago. This age is the crux of the mystery. If the spheres are artifacts, if they were manufactured, machined, or formed by any kind of intelligent process, they would imply the existence of a technically advanced civilization, dating back 3 billion years, long before even the first single-celled organisms appeared on Earth, according to the accepted biological and geological timelines. This is, by definition, an impossible technology. Natural or manufactured, the core debate. Conventional geology offers a clear, if unsatisfying, explanation. Concretion. Concretions are masses of mineral matter formed by the precipitation and cementing of mineral solutions around a central nucleus, often resulting in spherical shapes. Geologists argue that the spherical shape and the grooves are simply the result of natural geological processes, such as the rhythmic precipitation of material or the pressure of surrounding rock layers. However, the precision of some specimens continues to challenge this view. The perfectly etched equatorial lines on some spheres appear too regular, too parallel, and too sharp to be easily explained by random mineral growth. Furthermore, analysis of the spheres shows a hard, shell-like outer layer composed primarily of hematite, iron oxide, with a softer, fibrous material inside, sometimes mixed with goethite, another iron oxide mineral. The skeptics of the natural explanation point out the scale of precision. While nature creates spheres, like geodes, the uniformity and the grooves on certain Klerksdorp spheres seem to exceed typical natural formation. The composition. Why would a geological concretion form with such a hard, dense shell around a soft, fibrous core? The Klerksdorp spheres force us into a dramatic choice. Either accepted Earth history is entirely wrong, and an advanced, long-lost civilization existed in the deep Precambrian past, or we fundamentally misunderstand how basic geological processes can produce objects that mimic advanced machining. They are the ultimate technological mystery, a tangible object whose existence defies the calendar of our planet, a tiny, odd-one piece of evidence suggesting that the concept of lost technology might need to be measured not in millennia, but in billions of years. Conclusion. A history rewritten in stone and steel. From the impossible fitting of the megaliths at Sacsayhuamán, which challenges our understanding of civil engineering and rock cutting, to the metallurgical perfection of the Ulfberht swords, which demonstrates a mastery of steel centuries ahead of its time, and finally to the Osirian subterranean hydraulics and the geological absurdity of the Klerksdorp Spheres. The archaeological record is riddled with evidence of brilliance that was inexplicably achieved and then lost. These sites and artifacts are not the work of simple societies. They are the fingerprints of forgotten eras, isolated peaks of technological achievement that break the smooth curve of human progress we have drawn for ourselves. They suggest that the true story of humanity is one of cyclical advancement and collapse, of sophisticated knowledge acquired, used, and then submerged beneath the sands of time. The question is no longer if advanced technology existed in the deep past, but rather what catastrophic event or collective amnesia led to its total disappearance, and what other profound secrets are still buried, waiting to challenge everything we think we know. End of narrated with much older human species like Homo erectus or Neanderthals. Their skulls are robust, their brow ridges are thick, their faces are flat and broad, their noses are wide, and they possess a prominent chinless jaw. Yet they also possess some modern Homo sapiens traits. In essence, they look like a blend of archaic and modern humans. This anatomical mix led some researchers to hypothesize they represented a completely new, late surviving species of archaic human that lived in parallel with modern humans, or perhaps a unique, early migrating population of modern humans who interbred with a mysterious, ancient hominin species already present in East Asia. Beyond the shocking date, the fossils were initially difficult to date, but subsequent analysis including radiocarbon dating of charcoal found near the remains, place their age at roughly 11,500 to 14,500 years ago. This time period falls firmly within the late Pleistocene and the very beginning of the Holocene era, a time when Homo sapiens was thought to be the sole dominant hominin species across Eurasia, with Neanderthals and Denisovans long extinct. The Red Deer Cave. People represent a population that lived right up to the doorstep of recorded history. They were not primitive cave dwellers from 500,000 years ago. They were contemporary with the earliest stages of agriculture in the Middle East and the beginning of complex settlements. Their existence raises critical, unresolved questions. Where did they come from? Were they descendants of an earlier wave of archaic humans that survived a mass extinction event? Or are they a hybrid population resulting from a late and isolated interbreeding event between modern Homo sapiens and a yet-to-be-identified archaic lineage? Did they interact with modern Homo sapiens? If they coexisted for thousands of years in the same region, did they trade, compete, or interbreed? DNA analysis has been challenging due to the degradation of the bones. However, in 2022, researchers successfully sequenced DNA from a hominin leg bone from Maludong, confirming the individual was a female, Homo sapiens, but one whose lineage branched off from other East Asian populations surprisingly early. While the DNA confirms they were technically Homo sapiens, their unique anatomical features suggest a population so isolated and distinct that they highlight a massive gap in our understanding of human migration and evolution in Asia. They prove that human evolution was not a simple tree, but a complex, dense bush with unique and highly adapted populations that simply disappeared, leaving a ghost population in the evolutionary record. Their fate remains a mystery. Did they die out, or were they absorbed into the larger, more dominant modern human populations? The Red Deer Cave. People are a potent symbol of the dark corners of human ancestry. We have yet to illuminate the Gyroft culture, a pre-Elamite splendor. From the deep past of human ancestry, we fast forward to the dawn of recorded civilization, shifting our focus to the rugged Kerman province of Iran. Here, a series of spectacular and controversial plains along the Halil River Valley suddenly ripped a hole in the established timeline of civilization in the Near East. This is the realm of the Gyroft culture. The Gyroft discovery began in the early 2000s, following massive flooding that washed away centuries of sediment, exposing a vast necropolis and the remains of two significant settlement mounds, Konar Sandal A and B. What emerged were thousands of artifacts of unparalleled sophistication and beauty, dating back to the late 3rd millennium BCE, around 2500–2300 BCE. This dating is critical, as it places the Gyroft civilization contemporary with the earliest stages of Sumer and the Indus Valley, but its sophistication suggests it was not merely derivative. It was a major independent urban center that rivaled the giants of Mesopotamia. The Gyroft culture is defined by several astonishing features. One, the artifacts and artistry. The primary material evidence consists of thousands of exquisite artifacts, crafted from chlorite, soapstone, marble, copper, and bronze. The chlorite vessels are particularly striking. They are decorated with intricate carvings, depicting complex mythological scenes, battles between men and beasts, animals in combat, and hybrid human-animal figures. The artistic style is unique, highly developed, and unlike anything found in Sumer or Elam, suggesting a mature, distinct artistic tradition. They show a sophisticated knowledge of carving hard stone and metallurgy. 2. The architecture excavations at Konar Sandal B revealed the remains of a massive stepped platform, or ziggurat, that was substantially older and potentially larger than the earliest known ziggurats in Mesopotamia. The scale of the construction points to a high degree of social organization, centralized power, and advanced planning, hallmarks of a state-level society. 3. The question of literacy. The most contentious discovery was the presence of clay tablets bearing a unique, non-cuneiform script. This script, known as the Gyroft script or sometimes linear Elamite-like script, appears to be a unique form of writing, potentially even older than the oldest attested Sumerian cuneiform, around 3200 BCE. If confirmed as a fully developed writing system, the Gyroft would stand as one of the original cradles of literacy, fundamentally restructuring the history of the written word. The tablets remain largely undeciphered, fueling the mystery. Their existence suggests that while Sumer and Egypt were just beginning to use written language for bureaucracy and trade, a major, forgotten civilization in the Iranian plateau was doing the same, independently or as part of a yet-to-be-defined cultural network. Gyroft challenges the Mesopotamian-centric view of civilization's birth. Its sudden appearance, its unique artistic style, its monumental architecture, and its distinct script point to a lost peer. Civilization, one that flourished briefly, traded extensively. Gyroft artifacts have been found as far away as Dilmun and the Indus Valley, and then, like many of its contemporaries, collapsed or merged, fading into the shadows of the subsequent great empires. The Gyroft culture is a powerful reminder that history often privileges the survivors, leaving the equally grand achievements of the forgotten to be rediscovered by chance centuries later. The Tartaria tablets, an impossible script and chronological collapse. If the Red Deer Cave people stretch our understanding of human survival, and Gyroft stretches the definition of a first civilization, then the Tartaria tablets shatter the accepted timeline of writing altogether, creating a profound chronological collapse. The Tartaria tablets were discovered in 1961 by archaeologist Nicolae Vlasa near the village of Tartaria in Romania. Found alongside Neolithic figurines and human remains, these three small, baked clay tablets are etched with symbols that look strikingly familiar. And that is the heart of the mystery, the discovery and context. The tablets were found in a ritual pit, possibly a burial site, alongside 26 clay figurines and a shell bracelet, next to the bones of an adult. Vlasa initially dated them to around 2700 BCE, linking them to the Vinca culture of Southeast Europe. The dating dilemma, however, subsequent radiocarbon dating of the organic material, the bones and associated items from the layer where the tablets were found, delivered an astonishing result, around 5300-5500 BCE. If this dating is correct, the Tartaria tablets are not just old, they are approximately 2,000 years older than the earliest known Sumerian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphs, the traditionally accepted first writing systems in the world. The symbolic challenge, the symbols on the tablets are the most baffling element. One tablet is circular, divided into sections with geometric patterns. The other two are rectangular, one depicting a stylized animal or figure, and the other containing a series of stylized, abstract signs arranged in linear columns. These signs bear an uncanny resemblance to the linear Elamite, Sumerian, and early Minoan scripts that would emerge millennia later. If the symbols are indeed an early form of writing, or proto-writing, a precursor to writing, it implies that the concept of a systematic, formalized script originated in Neolithic Europe, not in the Near East. The implications are monumental. Decentralized literacy. It suggests that the sophisticated concept of symbolic communication and record-keeping was developed by a Neolithic European culture, the Vinca, long before urban civilization officially began. Missing link. It forces us to acknowledge a 2,000-year gap where this script should have evolved, spread or left other traces. Why did the script disappear? And why did the Near East later independently develop similar signs? Skeptical counterarguments. Most mainstream archaeologists view the tablets with extreme caution. The leading skeptical theory suggests they are not writing. The symbols are merely ritualistic or decorative. Pictograms, simple symbols used for magical or religious purposes, lacking the linguistic structure of true writing. Chronological contamination. The artifacts may have been disturbed or placed in the wrong layer. Intrusive burial, meaning the tablets themselves are much younger than the bones. they were found next to. Despite the skepticism, the Tartaria tablets, along with thousands of similar symbols found on Vincha, figurines throughout the Balkans, continue to stand as one of the most powerful and persistent anomalies in the history of human communication. They are the ghost of an early script, a testament to a forgotten intellectual revolution that may have occurred in Neolithic Europe, only to be utterly erased by subsequent history. Conclusion: the unwritten chapters of humanity. The stories of the Red Deer Cave people, the Gyroft culture, and the Tartaria tablets share a common thread. They represent the unwritten chapters of the human saga. They show us that advanced, unique, or successful populations and civilizations were constantly emerging, adapting and innovating in various pockets of the globe. The Red Deer Cave people prove that the branches of humanity were still actively pruning themselves well into the modern era, raising the specter of competitive extinction and the complex nature of human lineage. The Gyroft culture demonstrates that civilization was not a single invention in Mesopotamia, but a spontaneous parallel phenomenon, with highly artistic and organized peer cultures rising and falling in Iran, leaving behind exquisite artifacts and enigmatic scripts. The Tartaria tablets challenge the single-point origin of literacy, suggesting that the most revolutionary human invention, writing, may have been discovered and forgotten multiple times by civilizations whose material remains were too ephemeral to survive the relentless passage of millennia. These forgotten people and their lost technologies force us to confront the true fragility of civilization and the immense scale of what we have lost. The dark side of human history is not one of evil, but of profound amnesia, a vast record of genius that was destroyed by climate, catastrophe, or conquest. The real mystery is not just who they were, but what we, the survivors, have forgotten by only studying the history of those who succeeded. The forgotten civilizations are the ghosts of progress past, urging us to look beyond the great pyramids and ziggurats and listen to the whispers of those who vanished. Tales of the remains, the haunting truth of the skeletons of Rupkund, Lake and other controversial human fossils. The ground we walk upon is a vast open crypt. Beneath the soil, within the sediment layers of caves, and locked in the cold embrace of glaciers, lie the silent witnesses to the most profound and terrifying events of human history. These are the skeletal remains, the final, enduring records of peoples, populations, and individuals whose lives ended abruptly, mysteriously, or under conditions that defy conventional understanding. Unlike monumental architecture or technological artifacts, human remains tell a visceral, immediate story, a tale of genetics, migration, violent demise, or even entirely forgotten branches of our family tree. The remains we are about to examine are more than just archaeological finds. They are controversial human fossils that challenge core tenets of anthropology, history, and human evolution itself. They are the terrifying, haunting truth of lost identities and horrific fates. Our journey begins high in the desolate Himalayas, at an altitude of over 16,000 feet, where the cruel clarity of the mountain air holds one of the most macabre and persistent mysteries in the world: the skeletons of Rupkund Lake. The skeletons of Rupkund Lake, the Valley of Death. In the remote, uninhabited district of Uttarakhand, India, lies Rupkund, a glacial lake famously known as the Skeleton Lake. For most of the year, the lake is frozen solid, but when the summer sun melts the ice, the water recedes to reveal a horrific sight. Hundreds of scattered, discolored human skeletons, many still partially preserved with flesh, hair and clothing fragments. The discovery dates back to 1942, when a forest guard stumbled upon the grim scene. Initial theories, fueled by the ongoing World War, suggested the remains belonged to a Japanese invasion force, or perhaps a sudden epidemic that swept through a small village. However, the true story proved far more complex and far less contemporary. The cause of death, hail of the gods. Initial archaeological studies in the 1950s provided the first key clue. The manner of death. Forensic analysis of the skulls revealed that nearly every single individual had suffered a massive, sharp blow to the head. Crucially, the injuries were not caused by weapons or landslips. They were small, deep, circular fractures, consistent with blows from large, spherical objects impacting from directly above. The consensus conclusion was terrifyingly simple. The people were killed by a sudden, catastrophic hailstorm of extraordinary violence. Trapped in the exposed mountain bowl with nowhere to take shelter, they were beaten to death by hailstones, potentially the size of cricket balls, raining down from the high Himalayan sky. Who were they? The genetic twist. For decades, the victims were presumed to be a single group of people, perhaps a 9th century king and his retinue, or pilgrims as suggested by local folklore. However, a major comprehensive DNA study published in 2019 completely shattered this unified theory, revealing an astonishing demographic complexity that spanned 1,000 years. The DNA analysis identified 3 distinct genetic clusters. Among the approximately 38 individuals sampled, South Asian group, the majority. The largest cluster comprised individuals genetically related to present-day populations in India who perished over several events, with the bulk of this group dying around 800 CE, 9th century. Mediterranean group, the anomalies. A shocking finding was the presence of a group genetically linked to the modern populations of Crete and Greece. Furthermore, these individuals did not die with the South Asian group. Their time of death was dated to around 800 CE, the 19th century, a full millennium later. Southeast Asian group. A single individual was found with genetics linked to Southeast Asia, also dying around 1800 CE. This genetic and temporal separation rewrote the entire narrative of Rupkund. It showed that the lake was not the site of a single catastrophic event, but a recurring destination where different groups, separated by 1,000 years and thousands of miles, met a similar sudden end. The haunting questions remaining. The 800 CE catastrophe. Who were the 9th century South Asians? Were they pilgrims, soldiers, or traders? Why were they caught in the valley during such extreme weather? The 1800 CE mystery. Why were people from Greece and Crete traveling through the high, lethal passes of the Indian Himalayas in the 18th century? Were they mercenaries, merchants, or part of a documented but forgotten expedition? The preservation. How did the remains of 2 groups, separated by 1,000 years, become so intermixed, yet remain partially preserved in the same small lake? The skeletons of Rupkund Lake evolved from a single, ancient disaster to a chilling, multi-layered mystery of death and migration. The horrific truth is that this remote, frozen lake is a silent testament to multiple, high-altitude tragedies that span the millennia, reminding us of the immense dangers faced by travelers in the past and the incredible reach of human travel. The Paracas' elongated skulls, reshaping the head, reshaping history. Our journey takes a drastic turn, moving from the glacial peaks of Asia to the arid desert coastline of Peru, home to one of the most physically distinct and controversial groups of human remains ever discovered. The Paracas' elongated skulls, discovered by Peruvian archaeologist Julio Tello in 1928. These skulls were found in vast cemeteries on the Paracas Peninsula. The skulls exhibit an extreme, unnaturally elongated shape, the result of a cultural practice known as artificial cranial deformation, ACD. ACD was a widespread practice in various ancient cultures worldwide, often achieved by tightly binding an infant's head with cloth and wooden boards for several years to signify status, group affiliation, or spiritual belief. However, the Paracas' skulls stand apart due to the degree of deformation and the massive volume of the cranium, leading to intense debate over whether standard ACD alone can account for the extreme size, the volume and weight anomaly. While many deformed skulls are simply reshaped, critics of the mainstream explanation argue that some of the Paracas' skulls show an increase in the cranial volume by up to 25% and in weight by up to 60% compared to typical human skulls. They argue that mere binding only changes the shape of the skull, redirecting growth, not significantly increasing the total bone mass or brain capacity. This anatomical anomaly sparked a highly controversial hypothesis among fringe researchers that the Paracas people were a genetically distinct, non-human lineage, perhaps descended from a separate hominin group or even extraterrestrial visitors who possessed naturally larger, elongated craniums, which the binding merely enhanced. The genetic evidence and the migration puzzle. To settle the debate, genetic analysis was crucial. Initial, highly publicized DNA results claimed to show unknown mitochondrial DNA sequences. However, subsequent comprehensive peer-reviewed studies have provided a clear, if still complex, answer. They are Homo sapiens. The genetic analysis definitively confirms that the Paracas individuals were human, Homo sapiens. There is no evidence of non-human or extraterrestrial lineage. Genetic isolation. The DNA showed that the Paracas were a highly genetically distinct group, different from the local Andean populations that succeeded them, like the Inca. They had their own unique haplogroups, suggesting they were an isolated, highly localized population that had been resident in the region for a long time. The most profound truth revealed by the Paracas skulls is not one of alien ancestry, but of cultural tenacity and genetic insularity. The remains demonstrate how drastically human physical form can be manipulated through cultural practice, and how genetically isolated, sophisticated cultures could flourish and eventually disappear on the fringes of larger empires. The Paracas' elongated skulls are a haunting reminder of the sheer diversity and complexity of ancient human cultural identity, where body modification was a powerful, defining form of expression. The Star Child Skull, a case study in pseudoscience and public fascination. Our next piece of evidence is perhaps the most scientifically contentious and publicly sensationalized of all the controversial remains. The Star Child Skull. Unlike the previously discussed remains, which are accepted archaeological finds, the Star Child Skull is an artifact whose very authenticity and origin are hotly debated by the scientific community. The skull was allegedly discovered in 1930 in a mine tunnel in Chihuahua, Mexico, alongside a normal human skeleton. It gained international attention in 1999 when it was acquired and promoted by writer and researcher Lloyd Pye, who claimed the skull belonged to an alien-human hybrid. The anomalies claimed. The skull is clearly that of a child and exhibits several extreme physical characteristics. Massive cranium. The cranial vault is significantly larger and rounder than a normal human child's. Shallow eye sockets. The orbits are shallow and differently shaped. Absence of brow ridge. It lacks the characteristic brow ridge of a human. Thin bone density. The bone is thinner, lighter, and possesses unusual fibrous structures. Pye and his supporters argued these features could not be explained by known human deformities or genetic disorders. The scientific reality, hydrocephalus. The scientific community has consistently refuted the alien hybrid claim, providing a clear diagnosis. The skull exhibits all the classic, albeit severe, signs of congenital hydrocephalus, water on the brain, possibly combined with some form of progeria, a premature aging disorder, or other genetic syndrome. Hydrocephalus causes the buildup of cerebrospinal fluid, leading to severe expansion and thinning of the cranial vault, resulting in the massive rounded shape seen in the Star Child skull. Crucially, DNA analysis has definitively confirmed the skull is 100% human. Two separate independent DNA tests, performed in the 2000s, confirmed the presence of both human mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, and nuclear DNA. The child was male and belonged to a specific human haplogroup. The haunting truth of the Star Child skull is not one of extraterrestrial involvement, but a profound ethical and cautionary tale for archaeology. Exploitation of suffering. The skull is a tragic example of a child suffering from a severe medical condition, whose remains were removed from their context and subsequently exploited for sensationalism and profit, overshadowing the medical reality. Scientific illiteracy. It demonstrates the public's willingness to accept extraordinary claims without rigorous, peer-reviewed scientific evidence, highlighting the challenge of communicating complex diagnoses like hydrocephalus to counter-sensational, pseudoscientific narratives. While the Star Child skull may be a dead end for those seeking alien proof, it remains a poignant record of ancient human pathology and the universal tragedy of childhood illness. The Lapedo Child, the ghosts of interbreeding, our final piece of controversial human remains, takes us to the Lapedo Valley in Portugal, where the discovery of a young child's skeleton forced a dramatic re-evaluation of the final chapters of human evolution in Europe. Discovered in 1998 in the Abrigo do Lagar Velho rock shelter, the remains belong to a child who lived approximately 24,500 years ago. The skeleton, known as the Lapedo Child, or Lagar Velho I, was found in a ceremonial burial, painted with red ochre and adorned with perforated deer teeth and shell ornaments. The child's age makes him a post-Neanderthal, anatomically modern human, Homo sapiens, who lived in Europe long after the last known Neanderthals had disappeared. The hybrid hypothesis. Upon analysis, the remains presented a perplexing mixture of features. Modern human features, the chin, forearm, and upper body, exhibited clear modern Homo sapiens characteristics, consistent with the Cro-Magnon people of the time. Neanderthal features. However, the child also possessed several distinct features typically associated with Neanderthals, notably robust, short lower legs, a specific development of the ankle joint, and certain elements of the jaw and teeth. Based on this anatomical mosaic, the excavating team, led by João Zilhão and Eric Trincaus, proposed a highly controversial theory. The Lapedo Child was not a pure Homo sapiens, but a hybrid, the direct descendant of interbreeding between modern humans and Neanderthals that occurred thousands of years earlier, suggesting that Neanderthal genes persisted in the European gene pool long after the species had supposedly gone extinct. The genetic confirmation. This hypothesis was initially met with intense skepticism. Many critics argued the features were merely the result of the natural variations within modern human populations, or possibly due to cold climate adaptation. However, subsequent groundbreaking genetic research in the 2010s vindicated the core idea of the hybrid hypothesis, albeit not the Lapedo Child itself as a first-generation hybrid. Modern DNA sequencing of ancient Neanderthal and modern human genomes conclusively proved that all non-African Homo sapiens carry about 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, confirming that successful interbreeding events occurred shortly after modern humans migrated out of Africa, likely in the Middle East, around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. The haunting truth of the Lapedo Child is not that he was a rare anomaly, but that he was a tangible, physical embodiment of a major event in human history that was only later confirmed by molecular biology. The short, robust legs and other traits he displayed were likely the phenotypic expression of the ancient Neanderthal DNA that had been successfully integrated into the modern European gene pool. The Lapedo Child is the most poignant evidence that the story of human evolution is not one of simple replacement, but of assimilation, interbreeding, and the persistence of ghost populations within our own DNA, forever reminding us that we carry the genetic legacy of our long-lost cousins. Conclusion: the unspeakable truth in the bones. The tales of these controversial human remains force us to re-examine the historical record, not through the lens of victorious civilizations, but through the fragility and diversity of the human body and spirit. The Rupkund skeletons expose the brutal indifference of nature, illustrating how separate populations separated by millennia could meet identical, violent ends in the same unforgiving landscape. The Paracas. Skulls reveal the incredible extent of cultural modification and genetic isolation achieved by ancient groups whose physical form was dramatically shaped by tradition. The Starchild skull serves as a modern-day warning against the dangers of exploiting human suffering for sensational claims, reminding us that reality is often more complex and sad than fiction. The Lepedo child offers a profound genetic truth, that the story of Homo sapiens is inextricably linked with that of the Neanderthal, and that the ghost of our archaic past lives on in our very bones. These remains, the scattered, silent victims of the Himalayas, the deliberately elongated skulls of the desert, the tragically deformed skull of a child, and the Neanderthal, admixture in a Paleolithic boy, do not just fill in the gaps of history. They redefine its boundaries, offering the most intimate and haunting glimpse into the darkest, most unexpected corners of the human story. Geographical artistry, the enigma of colossal structures scattered across the Earth. The surface of our planet is not just a canvas of natural phenomena, mountains, rivers, and deserts. It is also an ancient sketchbook where human hands, or forces long forgotten, have etched colossal, mysterious designs. These are monuments not just of stone, but of landscape itself, structures so vast, so geometrically precise, and so challenging to construct that they transform entire geographical regions into puzzles. These colossal structures, often only truly visible from the air or through geological imaging, challenge our understanding of ancient engineering, coordination, and motivation. They force us to ask fundamental questions. Why did ancient people dedicate unimaginable resources to projects of this scale? When were they created, often in eras we deem primitive? And how was the technical mastery achieved without modern tools or aerial perspective? Our journey begins across the narrow strait separating India and Sri Lanka, where the fusion of geology, mythology, and colossal engineering creates a profound mystery. Ram Setu, or Adam's Bridge. Ram Setu, Adam's Bridge, the geological mythological colossus, stretching approximately 30 miles, 48 kilometers, between Pamban Island off the coast of India and Mannar Island off the coast of Sri Lanka. Ram Setu is a chain of limestone, shoals and sandbars that forms a natural causeway across the Palk Strait. It is a structure of immense geographical and cultural importance, yet its origins remain one of the most hotly contested debates in geomorphology and archaeology. The physical structure itself is submerged, generally lying 3 to 30 feet, 1 to 10 meters, beneath the water's surface, making the strait non-navigable for large ships. It is a ridge composed of a line of broken and submerged sandbanks, calcareous sand and corals. The why, myth versus necessity. In India, Ram Setu is intrinsically linked to the ancient Hindu epic, the Ramayana. The text describes the causeway as a bridge, built by the Vanasena, army of forest-dwellers monkeys, under the direction of the engineer Nala, to allow Lord Rama's army to cross to Lanka and rescue his wife, Sita. This narrative provides a clear, mythical why. The bridge was built for divine and military necessity. However, the scientific why is more complex. If it were a natural land bridge, it would have been vital for early human migration and trade between the subcontinent and the island. Its existence, whether built or natural, dramatically altered the regional geography and marine environment. The when, geochronology and conflict. The geological dating of Ram Setu is where the controversy intensifies. Geological timeline. Geologists widely agree that the feature is a natural geological formation, a ridge or shoal, created by a combination of tectonic activity, sedimentation, and lowered sea levels during the Pleistocene Ice Age. Studies of the stratigraphy indicate that the sandbanks are relatively young, possibly dating back to 4,000 to 18,000 years ago. corresponding to periods of fluctuating sea levels. Controversial dating claims. Non-mainstream researchers and some religious groups have cited satellite imagery showing a chain of perfectly aligned, large cuboid blocks, suggesting an artificial, human-built structure. Furthermore, analyses of core samples taken from the ridge have sometimes shown a layer of sand, capped by a layer of marine limestone, which in turn rests on a layer of naturally occurring rock. The controversy centers on the fact that some of the upper stones appear to be older than the sand they rest upon, a reverse stratigraphy that suggests large blocks were placed onto the sand before the limestone cemented around them. The most widely contested date is that derived from the Ramayana itself, which would place the construction at around 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, a period far too early for large-scale deep-sea engineering according to standard historical accounts. The how, nature's work or advanced engineering, the natural mechanism, the scientific consensus, holds that the shoals were formed naturally by the Coriolis force, pushing water and sediment through the shallow Strait, combined with the presence of a natural subsurface ridge of ancient hardened rock. The anthropogenic hypothesis. Proponents of the man-made theory argue that the precise linearity and the appearance of rectangular blocks visible in satellite images cannot be fully explained by natural wave action and sedimentation. They suggest the ancient builders may have utilized a form of floating rock or coral aggregate to rapidly construct a temporary causeway across the shallow waters, possibly incorporating natural rock formations into their design. Ramsetu remains a potent symbol of the clash between science and myth. Whether a colossal feat of ancient engineering or an extraordinary geological coincidence, it stands as a massive, submerged piece of geographical artistry whose origin continues to inspire wonder and fierce debate. The Kokno Stone, a lost monument of cosmological knowledge. Our focus shifts dramatically from submerged marine geography to a prehistoric stone slab in Scotland. The Kokno Stone, located near Clydebank, Scotland, is perhaps the finest example of Neolithic cup and ring mark art in Europe, and yet it is currently buried beneath several feet of earth to protect it from vandalism. Measuring approximately 42 by 26 feet, 13 by 8 meters, the stone is covered with over 90 complex geometric carvings, including spirals, circles, rings, and enigmatic lines. These carvings are known as cup and ring marks, a form of Neolithic rock art found across Britain and Europe, but nowhere with the density and complexity seen at Kokno. The why, ritual, cosmology, or mapping? The most challenging question surrounding the Kokno stone, and all cup and ring marks, is their function. The primary theories center on ritual and sacred sites. The sheer number of marks and the density of the spirals suggest the stone was a major sacred or ritualistic center. The carvings may have been used for religious ceremonies, marking out sacred paths or representing astronomical alignments. Cosmological maps. Due to the concentric circles and interconnecting grooves, some researchers propose the stone is an attempt to map the heavens or the local landscape. The spirals could represent celestial bodies or cyclical time, while the lines might delineate paths to other settlements or water sources. Shamanic journeying. Another theory suggests the complex, repetitive patterns were designed to induce trance states during shamanic rituals, acting as a visual aid for entering altered states of consciousness. The fact that the markings were repeatedly carved and recarved over time suggests the stone served a constantly evolving, but profoundly important, function for the Neolithic people who created it, likely linking their immediate physical environment to their deep spiritual beliefs. The when and how. Neolithic dedication. The Kokno stone carvings are reliably dated to the Neolithic period, around 5,000 years ago, or the early Bronze Age. The how is simple in concept but immense in dedication. The designs were painstakingly created using stone tools, likely hammerstones made of quartzite or basalt, to peck and abrade the softer sandstone surface. Given the size of the stone and the depth and complexity of the marks, the creation of the Kochno stone would have required years of collaborative effort, demanding a high level of social cohesion and shared, abstract understanding among the Neolithic people. The Kochno stone is not colossal in size like Ramsetu, but it is a colossal repository of prehistoric thought, a massive, silent library of symbols whose meaning is now completely lost, leaving us with a beautiful but enigmatic piece of geographical artistry. The Sacsayhuamán lines, a network etched into the high Andes. Rising over the high, arid altiplano of Bolivia stands the immense, snow-capped volcano Sacsayhuamán, spread across the surrounding landscape, covering an area of approximately 8,700 square miles, 20,500 square kilometers. An area 14 times larger than the Nazca lines is the world's largest work of art, the Sacsayhuamán lines. These are thousands of perfectly straight lines, often 3 to 10 feet, 1 to 3 meters wide, etched into the ground. They are not merely tracks. They are shallow channels created by the removal of the dark surface rock, andesite, to expose the lighter underlying soil, pale clay sand. Some lines stretch for an astonishing 12 miles, 20 kilometers, and maintain a near-perfect straightness despite traversing hills, valleys, and natural obstacles. The why, religious pilgrimage, and sacred geography. Unlike the military theory for Ramsetu or the artistic one for Kochno, the why of the Sacsayhuamán lines is almost certainly religious and ritualistic. The key lies in their endpoints. The lines invariably radiate outwards from or converge upon small, often circular mounds known as huacas, sacred places, chulpas, ancient burial towers, or tiny chapels. Anthropologists hypothesize that the lines served as pilgrimage, routes or sacred pathways, ritually walked by the indigenous Aymara people and their ancestors. The act of clearing the lines itself may have been a communal ritual, a constant process of renewal and dedication to the mountain and the sacred ancestors buried in the chulpas. The lines effectively connected every important sacred site in the region, turning the entire landscape into a massive, interconnected religious map, allowing individuals to navigate the sacred geography. The Wen, persistent tradition. Dating the Sacsayhuamán lines is challenging due to the lack of artifacts, but they are believed to be the cumulative effort of various indigenous cultures, primarily the Aymara, stretching back possibly 3,000 years. Unlike the Nazca lines, which were created and then abandoned, the Sacsayhuamán lines represent a living tradition, a continuous act of maintaining and using the pathways over millennia. The how, surveying without a survey. The most astonishing feature is their dead straightness over vast distances and uneven terrain. To achieve this level of precision, without modern surveying equipment, theodolites or compasses, the ancient builders must have used sophisticated methods, likely involving line of sight and flags. They likely employed a system of flags or poles and carefully maintained straight line sight over the undulating topography, astronomical alignment. Some lines may have been initially laid out using the rising or setting points of stars or the sun, providing an immutable baseline. The Sacsayhuamán lines are a testament to monumental, coordinated effort dedicated not to a single structure, but to the creation of a massive, sacred network, a geographical inscription, so vast it can only be appreciated from space. Created by people who possess no means of seeing their completed work from that perspective. The Brazilian geoglyphs, lost Amazonian civilizations. The Amazon rainforest is often perceived as a pristine, natural wilderness, home only to small, nomadic tribes before the arrival of Europeans. This perception was shattered by deforestation in the state of Acre, Brazil, which began to expose hundreds of elaborate, massive geometric patterns carved into the earth, the Brazilian geoglyphs. Over 450 of these geoglyphs have been identified across a region spanning over 8,000 square miles, 20,000 square kilometers. They take the form of perfect circles, squares, rectangles, and often complex interlocking structures, all created by digging ditches several feet wide and deep, and sometimes lined with earth mounds. The why, settlements, ritual, or defense. Unlike the Sacsayhuamán lines, the function of the Brazilian geoglyphs is intensely debated. Ritual and gathering centers. The most accepted theory is that they served as ceremonial, ritual, or community gathering places. Excavations have found little evidence of intense daily habitation, trash pits, hearths within the trenches, suggesting they were not primary residential areas, fortifications, defensive structures. Their geometric and often interlocking nature, as well as the surrounding ditches and mounds, suggests a possible defensive function built by large, settled communities engaged in some level of conflict. Housing foundations. A simpler theory posits the mounds were the bases for circular or rectangular communal longhouses, meaning the geometric shapes represent the foundations of large settlements that were subsequently abandoned. Regardless of their specific use, the geoglyphs provide a definitive why. They prove the existence of large, settled and highly organized pre-Columbian civilizations in the Amazon basin, a finding that completely overthrows the previous view of the Amazon as untouched wilderness. The when pre-Columbian zenith. The geoglyphs are reliably dated to between 200 BCE and 1300 CE, indicating they flourished during the late pre-Columbian period, well before the arrival of Europeans. Their abandonment coincided with the devastating effects of introduced diseases that decimated indigenous populations. The how, coordinated deforestation. The how of their construction points to a high degree of social organization and an understanding of engineering, massive earth moving, creating hundreds of these large ditches, some up to 6 feet deep and 40 feet wide, across the landscape required the coordinated labor of hundreds, if not thousands, of people over centuries. Environmental impact to create the geoglyphs. Large portions of the forest must have been deliberately cleared and maintained, suggesting a degree of deforestation and landscape management far beyond what was previously attributed to ancient Amazonian groups. The Brazilian geoglyphs are the Earth's silent confirmation that a vast, sophisticated civilization flourished and vanished in the Amazon, leaving behind their massive geometric imprints as a testament to their lost geographical artistry. The Karnak stones, a megalithic tidal wave. Our final colossal structure transports us to Brittany, France, to the largest collection of standing stones, megaliths, in the world, the Karnak stones. This site is not a single structure, but an astonishing series of parallel megalithic alignments, often stretching for miles across the landscape. The alignments consist of over 3,000 prehistoric standing stones, arranged in near-perfect straight lines, sometimes up to 4 miles, 6 kilometers long. They are clustered into several major groups, Menek, Camario, and Kaleskin among others. The scale of the stones decreases from west to east, creating a visual flow that is both deliberate and hypnotic. The why, astronomy, ritual, or military. The function of the Karnak stones remains the subject of intense, unresolved speculation. Astronomical calendar. The most famous theory, proposed by archaeologist Alexander Thom, suggests the alignments were a vast astronomical observatory or calculator. Thom claimed the stones were positioned to align with major lunar standstills and solar cycles using geometric principles. While some alignments are undeniable, the theory that they constitute a unified, highly accurate calendar remains controversial. Ritual and processional routes, given their linear arrangement. A simpler theory is that they marked sacred processional routes or boundaries, perhaps used for seasonal ceremonies, connecting various temples or burial mounds, dolmens, that dot the area. Ancestral veneration. Another suggestion is that the stones were placed as markers to commemorate ancestors or local tribal groups, with each alignment representing a specific family or clan. The most likely why is a combination. The stones served a cosmological purpose by integrating the movements of the sun and moon into a landscape-sized ritual space dedicated to ancestral memory. The Wen, Europe's megalithic age. The Karnak stones are firmly dated to the Neolithic period, roughly 4500 BCE to 2000 BCE. This makes them significantly older than Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza, placing them firmly at the zenith of Europe's megalithic building phase. The how, coordinated muscle and ingenuity. The how of their construction is a testament to extraordinary human coordination and ingenuity in a pre-wheel, pre-metal era. Quarrying and transport. The stones, sometimes weighing several tons, were quarried kilometers away. They would have been moved using simple, massive wooden sledges, rollers and ropes, likely dragged by hundreds of people. Erection. The stones were erected using the lever and fulcrum method, involving digging deep pits, levering the stone upright onto a ramp, and using ropes and counterweights to tilt it into position, then backfilling the pit. Precision. The maintenance of the straight, parallel lines over long distances required the use of pegs, ropes and basic geometry, demonstrating sophisticated communal organization and a persistent, long-term vision. The Karnak stones are a powerful, tangible record of a massive, communal effort in Neolithic Europe, transforming a vast region of France into a silent, stone masterpiece, the ultimate example of geographical artistry. Conclusion, the colossal scale of lost ambition. The Ram Setu, the Kokno stone, the Sajama lines, the Brazilian geoglyphs, and the Karnak stones are all separated by oceans, cultures, and millennia, yet they share a common profound message. The scale of ancient human ambition was not limited by available technology. Each structure serves as a monumental question mark regarding why. When and how these projects were realized, they reveal the ability to organize massive, coordinated labor over long periods, without the need for written language or complex state bureaucracies, as seen in Karnak and Sajama. They demonstrate a sophisticated knowledge of geology, surveying and engineering, enabling the creation of mathematically perfect shapes, visible only from a perspective the builders did not possess, as seen in the Sajama lines. They prove that human history includes vast, sophisticated civilizations that adapted and vanished in regions previously deemed uninhabited, such as the pre-Columbian Amazon, as seen in the Brazilian geoglyphs. These colossal monuments transform the Earth's geography into an archaeological site, forcing us to view the past not as a linear march of progress, but as a series of spectacular, regionally defined creative explosions. The geographical artistry of the past is a haunting reminder of the immense capacity of the human spirit to dedicate itself to a purpose, whether it be religious devotion, defense, or cosmological mapping, leaving behind a legacy that continues to puzzle, inspire, and humble us today. Unexpected discoveries, artifacts hidden by time that should not exist. The history we are taught is a comfortable, orderly timeline. The Iron Age followed the Bronze Age, and industrialization only dawned in the 18th century. It's a neat progression of technology, innovation, and knowledge acquisition, yet scattered in the deep strata of the Earth, locked within ancient rock formations, or found in the hands of cultures without the means to create them, are objects that flatly refuse to fit this historical framework. These are the out-of-place artifacts, OOPArts, modern-looking tools, complex alloys, or impossibly situated objects that appear to be misplaced by time itself. They challenge our fundamental assumptions about human development, suggesting either unknown advanced civilizations predated our own, or that sophisticated knowledge was somehow available and subsequently lost. The central question these artifacts pose is not what they are, but how did these modern-like objects end up in the past? Were they dropped, lost, or manufactured by a forgotten intelligence? A deep dive into this chronological chaos begins in Texas, where a common tool was found embedded in rock. The geological consensus dates back millions of years, The London Hammer, Iron Age relic in Cretaceous rock. The London Hammer, also known as the Hammer, in the rock, is one of the most provocative and perplexing OOPArts ever discovered. It was found in 1934 by a couple, Max and Emma Hahn, while hiking near London, Texas. They discovered a piece of hard, calcareous rock with the head of a hammer protruding from it. The crucial detail? The rock appeared to be a geode, a formation that takes immense time to solidify around an object. The anomaly of context and composition, the geological formation in which the hammer was found, the surrounding limestone nodule, is identified as belonging to the Cretaceous period, placing its age at roughly 140 million years old. This is the central anomaly, a technologically advanced tool existing in a geological layer that precedes not only the appearance of modern humans, but also the extinction of the dinosaurs. Analysis of the hammer itself adds further mystery. The handle, the wooden handle, much of which has turned to coal, was found partially petrified and mineralized, suggesting significant antiquity. The hammerhead's composition, metallurgical analysis of the iron head, conducted in the 1980s, revealed an almost impossibly pure composition. The iron content is over 96%, with little of the slag or carbon typical of ancient or even medieval smelting. Critically, the iron also lacked impurities like manganese, magnesium or nickel, and contained a high percentage of chlorine. This purity suggests a smelting process, far more sophisticated than anything known until the late 19th century. Rust resistance, the iron head showed no signs of rust or significant corrosion, despite being encased in moist stone for an alleged 140 million years. Some researchers suggested the iron was protected by a thin layer of oxidized iron magnetite, or that its unusual purity somehow inhibited corrosion. The debate, contamination versus prehistory. The conventional archaeological explanation struggles with the London hammer's immense age. The mainstream critique, contamination. Skeptics argue the hammer is merely a 19th century miner's or prospector's hammer that was accidentally dropped into a crevice or fissure in the ancient rock formation. Over time, highly soluble minerals, calcite, dissolved in water, cementing the hammer into the rock, creating the illusion that it formed with the rock. The geode-like appearance, they argue, is the result of rapid mineral accretion around a foreign object. The purity challenge. While the contamination theory addresses the impossible age, it fails to fully explain the metallurgical purity and the unusual chlorine content of the iron, which is not typical of simple 19th century smelting. The London hammer, therefore, is either the most powerful piece of evidence for a 140 million year old lost civilization with advanced metallurgy, or it is a modern artifact encased in a rock, matrixed through a peculiar and rapid geological process. The terrifying truth is that if the latter is true, it forces us to re-evaluate how quickly and easily geological formations can entrap and preserve modern objects, throwing into doubt the dating of other artifacts found in situ. The Aiud Aluminum Wedge, a metal that should not exist. If the London hammer questions the purity of ancient iron, the Aiud Aluminum Wedge questions the very existence of a modern metal in antiquity. Discovered in 1974 near the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, the wedge was found 35 feet 11 meters deep in a sand pit, alongside mastodon bones. It is a roughly wedge-shaped solid metal object, approximately 8 inches, 20 centimeters long, covered in a thick layer of aluminum oxide. The impossibility of aluminum. The central anomaly is the metal itself, aluminum. Aluminum is never found in its pure metallic state in nature. It is always locked up in bauxite ore. To extract metallic aluminum, a massive amount of electrical energy is required using the whole IRU, electrolytic process, a technique that was only successfully developed and patented in 1886. The chronological impossibility is stark. The Aiud wedge was allegedly found in a layer associated with the bones of a mastodon, an extinct elephant relative whose existence dates the surrounding layer to the Pleistocene era, perhaps 20,000 to 11,000 years ago. The composition and structure. When tested by Romanian scientists, the wedge was found to be a complex, high-purity alloy, 89% aluminum, mixed with 11 other elements, including copper, zinc, lead, and trace amounts of others. The purity of the aluminum and the complexity of the alloy led to a scientific consensus that it was certainly not a naturally formed metal. Further analysis showed the wedge had a slightly concave surface and two distinct holes, suggesting it was once part of a more complex assembly. Its shape and structure led some researchers to suggest it might have been the landing strut or foot of some form of ancient flying machine or complex technology. The debate: lost technology versus WWT debris. The mystery of the Aiud wedge forces a choice between two equally challenging scenarios. Lost ancient or alien technology. If the in situ geological dating is accepted, the wedge must represent a piece of technology from an incredibly advanced, forgotten civilization or an extraterrestrial visit thousands of years ago, implying a lost knowledge of electrolysis or a non-electrical method of smelting. Modern contamination, the WBT theory. The most accepted skeptical explanation is that the wedge is simply a fragment of modern wreckage, likely dropped during World War II. Its complex alloy is similar to those used in modern aviation, aircraft parts. The object could have been washed into the riverbank and eventually embedded in the sand layer through flooding or sediment shifting, deceiving the initial excavators. However, even the modern debris theory struggles to fully explain the depth of the find, 11 meters, and the specific complex aluminum alloy used, as with the London hammer. The Aiud Aluminum Wedge stands as a physical contradiction of the technologically modern material found in a geological context that predates the very concept of modern science. The Koso artifact, the spark plug in the geode. Perhaps the most visually persuasive of the OOPArts is the Koso artifact, a discovery made in 1961 by 3 rock collectors in the Koso Mountains of California. The trio found a geode-like nodule that, upon being sliced open by a diamond saw, revealed a porcelain and metal object at its core, a component that looked unmistakably like a modern spark plug. The chronological absurdity. The rock nodule itself presents the primary chronological challenge. Geologists estimate that the rock formations in the Koso area, specifically the layer where such nodules form, are generally 500,000 years old. The Koso artifact was encased in a very hard clay and shell, a conglomerate that had to be cut with a specialized saw. The internal object, the artifact, was a cylindrical piece of white ceramic or porcelain, surrounded by a copper ring, a hexagonal metal sheath, and a magnetic metal rod running down the center. This design is identical in function to a 20th century spark plug, a necessary component for the internal combustion engine, which was only invented in the late 1800s. The identification and analysis. The analysis of the artifact focused on the metal core and the porcelain housing. The central core, it was composed of a magnetic metal, iron, that, upon X-ray analysis, appeared to have a minute copper sleeve or spring wrapped around it. The ceramic, the porcelain material resisted a needle test, suggesting high durability and heat resistance, consistent with modern spark plug ceramic insulators. The shell, the outer shell, was composed of weathered iron, clay, and sand. The internal structure strongly suggested that the object was a Champion brand spark plug used in 1920s era, Ford Model Ts or Model As, or perhaps mining equipment. The definitive conclusion and lost evidence. The Koso artifact represents a powerful test case for the OOPArt phenomenon. The skeptical resolution, unlike the London hammer's metallurgical purity challenge, the Koso artifact's technological identification is virtually undeniable. It is a spark plug. The scientific explanation, therefore, is forced to completely dismiss the half-million-year geological dating. The consensus among geologists is that the artifact was simply a modern object that fell into a soft, ancient mudbed that rapidly dried, hardened and mineralized, creating the hard nodule around it in a short period, perhaps a few decades. The tragic loss of context. The object was unfortunately lost to its original owners and never subjected to definitive, independent, peer-reviewed geological or scientific analysis by a professional body. The lack of precise dating of the surrounding matrix by geologists at the time, combined with the clear modern identity of the object, renders the Koso artifact a classic example of an OOPArt that, while almost certainly a piece of recent history, highlights how easily rapid mineralization can mimic deep geological antiquity, obscuring the true story. The Koso artifact serves as a dramatic example of how a simple, lost tool can become a symbol of lost civilization, purely due to the misunderstanding of geological timescales and the sensationalism surrounding its discovery. The Eltanin antenna, the deep-sea technological ghost. Our final unexpected discovery takes us not into the rock of the earth, but into the deep, dark abyssal plains beneath the Antarctic waters, a realm where no human civilization could have flourished. The Eltanin antenna is an object recovered in 1964 by the U.S. oceanographic research vessel Eltanin from the seabed southwest of Cape Horn, at a depth of over 13,000 feet, 4,000 meters. The structure and technological appearance. The Eltanin antenna is a stalk-like object, approximately 3 feet, 1 meter long, with 6 radial spokes ending in small spheres or caps. The spokes, which bend slightly upward, emerge from a central column. It was photographed and briefly examined, and its geometric regularity immediately suggested an artificial, technologically designed structure, perhaps an antenna, a probe, or some form of measuring instrument. The initial analysis by the researchers themselves noted the baffling symmetrical geometry, noting that nothing like it had ever been trawled from the deep ocean floor. The object seemed to have been anchored to the seabed. The extraterrestrial or ancient deep sea hypothesis. Due to its incredible depth and remote location, the Eltanin antenna quickly became associated with hypotheses involving advanced, non-human technology. Extraterrestrial probe. Given its isolation and complex, symmetrical structure, some argued it might be a remnant of an ancient alien. Probe that crashed into the deep ocean. Advanced lost civilization. If not alien, it was hypothesized to be a structure built by a highly advanced deep-sea civilization, capable of engineering complex, metallic structures for survival or research at extreme depths. The object remains a ghost in the annals of oceanography, having been misplaced or lost shortly after its recovery, leaving only the photographs and the initial tantalizing descriptions. The scientific reality. Nature's precision. In the years following the initial excitement, marine biologists offered a far more mundane, yet still remarkable, explanation. The Eltanin antenna was almost certainly a natural, biological organism, specifically a species of glass sponge, known scientifically as Cladohesa, concrescens or related species. Symmetry in biology, many deep-sea sponges, particularly those that thrive in the nutrient-poor abyssal plains, grow in intricate, geometrically perfect forms to maximize surface area for filtering food particles. The rigid, stalk-like structure and the radial spokes are characteristic of certain carnivorous or structural sponges. The misidentification. The object was likely misidentified in the initial fleeting examination in 1964, a common occurrence when trawling up never-before-seen deep-sea fauna. The symmetry that appeared to be the result of machining was simply the result of biological evolution, optimizing for deep-sea environments. The Eltanin antenna's story is a profound lesson in perception. When confronted with a complex, symmetrical object in an impossible context, the human mind is quick to attribute it to technology. In this case, The unexplained sophistication was biological, not mechanical. It is an OOPArt not of misplaced technology, but of a misplaced assumption about nature's capacity for complexity. Conclusion: the illusion of impossibility. The unexpected discoveries, the London hammer, the Aiud Aluminum Wedge, the Koso artifact, and the Eltanin antenna, collectively, present a powerful but nuanced argument about the fragility of our historical timeline. They are unified by the central question: how did these modern-like objects end up in the past? The evidence forces us to confront three challenging possibilities. Lost high technology, the London hammer. Aiud wedge. If the geological dating is upheld, these artifacts are proof that either a non-human intelligence or a civilization vastly older and more advanced than our own existed on Earth, capable of metallurgy and material science we only recently mastered. Rapid geological processes, the Koso artifact. The Koso artifact demonstrates that the geological process of mineralization and concretion can occur far more rapidly than typically assumed, creating the illusion of deep time around modern objects. This forces skepticism, suggesting that seemingly impossible chronological placement can be the result of a geological trick. Misidentification of nature, the Eltanin antenna. The Eltanin antenna proves that the natural world contains geometric and structural complexity that can easily be mistaken for manufactured technology, highlighting the dangers of relying on visual assessment alone in extreme environments. Ultimately, these OOPArts serve not only as mysteries, but as powerful tools for challenging scientific complacency. They force geologists to rigorously re-examine sedimentation rates, metallurgists to reconsider the limits of ancient smelting, and historians to acknowledge the gaps in our knowledge. Whether they are fragments of forgotten eras, sophisticated natural organisms, or simply 19th century trash encased in rapidly hardening rock, they are enduring reminders that the story of our planet is filled with secrets that time has so far refused to unlock.